Welcome back guys to We Talk Boxing, and in this video I'm going to be giving you guys my thoughts, in regards to boxing in 2022. Just going to do a brief review, just about pretty much everything in the world of boxing for the whole of this year. Obviously you guys can let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Do you agree with some of my obviously thoughts? And you can let me know your thoughts on some of the aforementioned as well. So overall, guys, I feel as if it's been a fairly decent year, for boxing. There's been some good fights which have took place, such as, Khan versus Book, Taylor versus Serrano, Fury versus White, AJ versus Usyk 2. Obviously, we had Taylor versus Catterall, and obviously Paul versus Silva. Lol, I'm joking. The last one didn't really count there, but the other ones that I mentioned were some good fights. Realistically they took place and it did happen. So overall, yeah, it was a fairly decent year. However, I personally thought it was going to be a better year because obviously 2021 was a very good year for boxing, especially for UK boxing as well. But I feel, most boxing fans, probably would have thought before, pre 2022 that probably would have seen some of the biggest fights and some of the best fighters fight each other, such as an AJ versus Fury, or Spence versus Crawford, or Garcia, Devin Haney, Davis, or Lomachenko all fight each other this year. Do you know what I mean? As well as maybe, potentially even a Bivol versus Beterbiev as well. Most boxing fans thought we probably would have had some of these bigger names, go off against each other to potentially, to see who is the best in each division. But it didn't really plan out that way. And a lot of the times, a lot of the politics kind of got in the way, really. So anyway, let's hope 2023 is a better year, for getting some of the bigger fights, as I've mentioned, because realistically, boxing needs to try and keep, some of the new fans entertained, as well as, just get the juices flowing as well in some of the old boxing heads, such as myself, because we want to see these fights. We want to see these big names go off against each other, and hopefully, one champion in each division as well, which it's going to be tough, but let's hope we get some big fights in 2023. Now I'm going to be giving you guys, a brief overview of my thoughts, on various different boxing categories as well for 2022. And I know most of you guys potentially won't agree with some of my, thoughts, but however, you could leave your thoughts in the comments below. Who do you feel, should have either won fight of the year or certain categories, etc., etc. So boxing platform of the year. So for me, this has got to go to Sky Sports. Do you know what I mean? As they initially had, found it pretty much hard to kind of replace their boxing promoter Eddie Hearn at the time. But they brought in obviously a pretty much an unknown in Ben Shalom. But again, he's proved pretty much most people wrong, really. He's young, he's energetic, he's inspiring, he's motivating, and he's delivered us this year some big fights. Do you know what I mean? Such as Kell Brook versus Khan, obviously the Catterall one as well. So again, yeah, some big fights so far, and hopefully in 2023, Shalom and obviously Sky Sports with Boxer could continue this going forward as well. So for me, although I'll probably give, Sky Sports probably the best platform of the year, I'd also give, as I said, Ben Shalom probably the best promoter of the year. And yes, most people probably say, well, he's got a lot of financial backing from Sky Sports, but he's slowly transforming Sky Sports boxing, and it's bringing back, nationwide boxing, to all areas within the UK, and he's trying to promote, some of the best up and coming boxers in the UK as well, and a lot of them, some of the best talent are signed with him. And week after week, since Shalom's been with Sky Sports, they've been putting on some good cards as well, and some competitive fights. Not all their fights have gone to plan. A lot of their unbeaten fighters have been beat. Do you know what I mean? Which means that Sky Sports and Boxer are not protecting them. They're sticking them in there. In good competitive fights, and that's one thing I do like. Because many times, over the years we've seen, boxing promoters just chucking their guys in there, knowing that they're 90% certain that their fighter is going to come out with the victory. But as I said, it's all changing over Sky Sports, and let's hope this continues really. Okay, so the second one I'm going to be starting with is the worst boxing platform of the year. Now, for me, this is an easy one. Do you know what I mean? And I've decided to go with DAZN due to them increasing the monthly subscription without giving us, you know what I mean, good quality for regular shows. And now, you know what I mean, it looks as if they're trying to compete with the pay-per-view subscription market and not putting on those quality shows as they first did, you know what I mean, when they launched as an app. And for me, you know what I mean, when they first launched, you know what I mean, I was excited because yes, it was a cheap price, you know what I mean, monthly subscription, but they were putting up some really decent fights, and you know what I mean, their cards are really awesome as well. And Eddie kind of, you know what I mean, promised us that this would stay the same, you know what I mean, even when they increased the price. And what annoys me probably the most really is, you know what I mean, seeing the subscription, you know what I mean, monthly price go up, but they're pretty much putting on these white collar boxing shows, you know what I mean, by launching, you know what I mean, their, you know what I mean, pay per view market by adding on like KSI shows. For what really? You know what I mean, these guys are amateurs, they're not proper boxers, and you know what I mean, they're giving them the mainstream to go and showcase their talent on what? For what? I don't get it. It's really weird. Do you know what I mean? And it's it's kind of disappointing. And you know what I mean, one of my earlier videos in regards to doing it on the zone, I kind of said that, you know what I mean, they could either go big or they could either go bust like Box Nation, and at the minute I see them going downhill like Box Nation. And the only way for them to change this is by giving us some good quality shows on their regular monthly subscriptions. And yes, they have got a pay-per-view subscription, and I get that, but the bigger fights could be on there. You know what I mean, such as your Canelos or you know what I mean, an AJ or someone like that in the future. But you know what I mean, us regular boxing fans who pay our subscription, we need some decent shows, similar to how Sky Sports are doing it. Do you know what I mean? But like, yeah, it's just interesting. But you guys can let me know your thoughts on this one, really. But let's hope they change it, really. But for me, I thought they're, you know what I mean, they've had a poor 2022, and that's why I'm giving it to them. Okay, so my choice for Women's Fighter of the Year. So most people would probably go with the likes of Katie Taylor, Amanda Serrano, or Clarissa Shields. However, I've chosen to go with a little Liverpudlian destroyer in Natasha Jonas, as she has had a fantastic year and is currently undefeated and currently the unified WBO, WBC and IBF Super Featherweight champion. And she looks set to try and become the undisputed champion in 2023. So this is a tricky one really, because there are a few names which pretty much stand out, you know what I mean, such as Usyk, Anoye, Bivol, you got Shakur Stevenson as well. But I'm gonna go with someone, you know what I mean, who's, you know what I mean, had a successful year, two fights, you know what I mean, against the same person that he's fought this year as well. Both times, you know what I mean, he's went away from home as well, you know what I mean, in the person's backyard to defeat him and dethrone him as well. And that's Devin Haney, you know what I mean, as a young fighter, he has become, you know what I mean, the undisputed lightweight champion. And obviously, as I mentioned earlier, he went to Australia twice to defeat and dethrone the current champion at the time, you know what I mean, George Kambosos Jr. in hostile conditions. And hopefully Haney, you know what I mean, should have a brilliant 2023 as well. And I'd like to see him, you know what I mean, go in there with someone like a Lomachenko as well in the first half of the year. Again, that would be a brilliant name to have on his records. Okay, so fight of the year. So with this one, you know what I mean, it got me thinking really, because I was pretty much deep in thought, because sometimes when we watch fights live, you know what I mean, and it was a good fight, we always say, oh, that was awesome, etc., and it's probably fight of the year. But when it comes to, you know what I mean, thinking back to see exactly which fights, you know what I mean, were fight of the year, sometimes it kind of leaves our memory, you know what I mean, a bit blank really. But anyway, you know what I mean, I could have chose, you know what I mean, potentially Taylor versus Catterall, because that was a brilliant fight, or maybe the Bivol versus Canelo, or Rakimov versus Barrett, or even Joyce versus Parker. But I've decided to go with Taylor versus Serrano due to this fight, you know what I mean, being a closely fought matchup, you know what I mean, with two fighters who, you know what I mean, have brilliant boxing skills. And again, to me, this was, you know what I mean, probably one of the best fights I've ever seen really, because both fighters went toe to toe from round one. Do you know what I mean? And You know what I mean? Both fighters weren't stepping back. They weren't giving each other any time to breathe. It was very entertaining, and as I said, you know what I mean, it's very close on the scorecards as well. And to be honest, you know what I mean, at the end of the fight, either fighter could have pretty much been named the winner, and no one would have been disappointed with the result because it was that good of a fight. Now, the only thing that I felt was disappointed about the fight that it was 10 2-minute rounds. Personally, I would have liked to have seen, you know what I mean, a couple of extra, you know what I mean, rounds to kind of just to whet our appetite a little bit more because it was that exciting. You know what I mean, you didn't really want it to end. But let's hope, you know what I mean, next year we could potentially see a second fight between these two fighters because it was a hell of a fight. And yeah, my fight of the year. Okay, so the biggest boxing disappointment of 2022. Okay, so most people would probably say, you know, I mean, this has got something to do with the Conor Benn versus Chris Eubank Jr. fight being cancelled due to Ben testing positive for a banned substance, or potential Elvis Spence versus Terence Crawford not being able to agree a boxing fight deal, or potentially a white collar, you know, what I mean, boxing becoming globalized and televised, you know, what I mean, attraction for major platforms such as the Zone. But for me, the biggest disappointment for this year came in the heavyweight division. And most boxing fans, including myself, thought that we were finally going to see, you know, I mean, the anticipated match between AJ versus Fury, which was, you know, I mean, was pretty much agreed by both fighters, you know, in personal terms. But all that all that needed to get done was the promoters to pretty much agree a deal. And in the end, the fight fell apart and Fury ended up fighting Chisora in the trilogy matchup, whilst AJ, you know, I mean, travelled the globe looking for a new trainer with no boxing date return really for 2023. So it was very disappointing for me. This fight got built up, you know what I mean, as potentially one of the biggest fights for 2022, and in the end it just fell by. So anyway guys, that was my box review for 2022. Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Bless.